Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. It's Mrs. Dunlap with your Chapter 3 and Chapter 4 chat with Mrs. Dunlap on The Great Gatsby. So, I hope you're all doing well. Sorry, I've been a little behind in making video updates for you, but thanks for your patience, and I hope this is helpful. I'm hoping to do a chapter 5 and 6 chat with you before your next quiz, so be ready for that. Okay, so we're going to start with chapter 3 and talk about chapter 4. I hope you're understanding everything that's going on in the plot and with the characters. There's so many resources out there in case you are confused that you can look at. I've been posting little video clips to help reiterate what's going on in the chapter as well. But number one thing you need to remember is if you have a question, you need to email me or text me and ask, and I'll be glad to help. Okay? Or we can Google Meet during my office hours, which are on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 to 11. Okay, so I got my book here. Can you guys see that? Yes. Okay. There we go. And I'd like you to open up to chapter 3. It's on 39. So chapter 3 starts out with Nick telling us a little bit about Gatsby's mansion and how he's preparing for the party. And basically, it's like Gatsby's house is quiet all week, except his servants are hustling and bustling. He probably has 10 to 12, if not more. He's got like 2 main servants that actually have a name, or like Clip Springer, who's the piano or organist. But the rest, he's got, cleaning his big mansion and preparing for the drunken weekend parties. Okay. The first couple pages talks about how Gatsby has all of this fruit, especially oranges, brought in for his parties, to make them mix drinks with the orange juice and whatever alcohol they're putting in there. And also, there's such strong imagery in these first couple pages with how well lit Gatsby's mansion is. Again, you got to remember, look up Gatsby's mansion on Google. It is this colossal French-looking mansion. It looks almost like a medieval castle, and it's lit up. It's like a circus when everybody's there. It's like a carnival. Okay, so you needed to imagine that in chapter 3 here. Okay, I think he definitely has a huge orchestra, but I think it mentioned he might have had more than one. And Nick just sets up the tone, describes the house in these first couple pages here. So you should have annotated. This is a lot of setting, imagery, details, and that DIDDLES acronym. Remember, details, imagery, diction, language, and syntax for DIDDLES. Okay, so I'm going to show you a picture over here. No lie, this is straight from the movie. I love the way the director portrayed the craziness with all the confetti and glitter, and we've got Gatsby's pool here and how the people are surrounded on that and partying. There's the orchestra there. Here's another picture for you, just so you can see all the modern flappers there, short hair, high dresses, dancers, tons and tons of people. So when we talk about Gatsby's parties, people are coming from all over the city, okay, and especially from West Egg and East Egg. So this big theme, this big idea you should have got from chapter 3 is we've got a clash in 2 types of classes of people at these parties. We've got the East Eggers and the West Eggers, who are of equal wealth, but the East Eggers are that generational, fancier, more sophisticated money. So when they see these dancers and these Hollywood stars that he mentions here, if you look on page 41, like Gilda Gray, all these like new money, these 15 minute of fame people, you can imagine the East Eggers are like, oh, they put their nose up to them like, oh, who is that woman who's like flashy and dancing and lifting her skirts? Like it's like a taboo. Okay, so you've got to understand The East Eggers are snobs. They really are. The West Eggers are like, they're kind of more accepting and fun and have all this new money, and I don't know. So you got to remember the East Eggers are a little snotty. Okay, so we've got this clash. That's a theme in these two classes of people. Okay, we find out on page 41 that Nick was invited. He was like the only one that received an invitation. These people just show up by the hundreds. So you can imagine, if I were Gatsby, I'd feel a little used. I would guess, like, why are these people coming? But he doesn't care, folks. It is not about all these people coming and drinking and getting crazy and him being used for his alcohol and money and parties. It's because, as you find out in chapter 4, that he is searching for a particular someone to show up at his party. And if you guessed it, it's Daisy Buchanan from chapter 1, who he stretched his hand out towards the green light at the end of the dock, her green light, with that hope of reconnecting with her. Okay, and then that whole symbolism goes much deeper as we read through the next couple chapters, and I'll come back to that. Okay. So I'm looking here through page 42 and 43. Gatsby's like a wallflower. I wrote in my annotations here, can you see that? Oh, it might be a little blurry. But where's Gatsby? He's just this kind of like shuffling through the people, smiling, saying hello, but his attention, like I said, is focused on finding Daisy. I love how Nick says, I was on my way to get roaring drunk. And then Jordan comes up to him. So they spend some time together throughout Gatsby's party in chapter 3, and they talk and reconnect there. If you look on the bottom of page 43, there's women talking about how much money they're spending on dresses. It'd be interesting. She says $265 back then in the 20s. You're probably talking thousands of dollars on a gown for this party now. As you go through pages 44 and 45, this is where you start to see the rumors about Gatsby. He was a German spy. He killed someone. He's cousin to Kaiser Wilhelm, who, if you look him up, he was a Russian general, I believe. And then it talks about there were two dinners served at Gatsby's party. But again, at the end of 44, you need to mark these East Eggers and West Eggers are they're not really jiving well together. They're kind of clashing at this party because they're two different types of people. So then we get to Gatsby's library here, and we've got Allies. Do I have a better picture of him? No, right here. Okay, Allies, as you can see, is called Allies because he's got those funny looking glasses on and his mustache that kind of makes him look like an owl. And he's so rip-roaring drunk and just perplexed by Gatsby's wealth that he's looking through these books and he's finding out that they're real. And this symbolizes how, kind of coming together that Gatsby is real. He's not this mystery that everybody's been spreading rumors about or talking about, that everything in his house is legit. Let's see. Oh, so on page 47, Nick bumps into a strange man and they start talking about being in World War I and how they might have been in the same battalion together. And Gatsby keeps saying old sport, like kind of a friendly gesture to him. He's really actually trying to sound sophisticated and classy. And we find out that I'm Gatsby at the top of 48. He says that. And Nick and him, they like hit it off and they talk a little bit. We can assume Gatsby's in his 30s. He starts to tell us about that there. But if you've noticed through the chapter, he receives some phone calls, and I want you to pay attention to that. Why is Gatsby always being pulled away to receive a phone call. Who might be on the other end of that? Okay. He talks about being an Oxford man, meaning Oxford University in England, actually studying there. That's like one of the most prestigious universities ever. That university, and oldest, so it would be a huge success to have been a student there. I'm going through here for you a little bit. And then it's really weird. Gatsby wants to speak to Jordan Baker alone. So they go off. She's not a love interest, just so you know, and they talk about something in private, and that's again briefly mentioned at the end. I wonder what it is. She's best friends with Daisy. Gatsby's looking for Daisy, and he's probably manipulating this whole situation to get Nick and Jordan to get Daisy into his life again. Okay. So the last couple pages, this was on the quiz, that you see here is just how the night is wrapping up. There's fights, there's married men hitting on other women right in front of their wives. There's one girl got so drunk they had to shower her off with cold water, which an East Egger, if she saw that, would be like mortified, okay? Because East Egg women don't act that way. Wives are upset. And then again, page 53, another city wants Gatsby on the phone. Philadelphia wants you on the phone, sir. So Gatsby has to go again to answer that. What is going on? Okay, why does he keep being called to the phone? And then at the very end of the chapter, Fitzgerald showcases to you the drunkenness and the lack of responsibility among these people in this era with the car crash. And it was Allies, again, who crashed his car. And he crashed it so bad that the wheel fell off, and he tried to get back in and drive it again. So you can tell how intoxicated they are. Reckless, careless, and really, how could they think that they could drive out of there? So Nick concludes the chapter with talking about the summer a little bit. Remember, the story starts off in the beginning of the summer, June. He talks about some romances that he's had with a girl in the city, just hanging out with friends, working, and he's even starting to develop a little thing with Jordan. He has a tender curiosity for her, as you see on page 57. But you also find out on page 57 that she cheated in her golf tournament. So we know that Jordan is reckless, careless, a liar, a cheat. This was on your quiz as well. She borrows a convertible and leaves the top down, and it rains. And she, barely accepts that. So top of 58, you should mark that she's a liar, incurably dishonest, he says, very hypocritical, entitled, and I don't think that's attractive to Nick. I'm not sure he's feeling that. Okay, he likes her because she's gorgeous. Let me show you. Where is she here? I should have a picture of her. Yeah, right there. Your modern flapper. Okay, but I don't know if this is gonna last. So, and then the very end of the chapter is a great quote about him being one of the few honest people that he's ever known. And it's the truth. He is going to tell us the truth about these people and Gatsby and these parties and all of these relationships. Okay, that's the end of chapter 3. If you're still confused, again, shoot me an email and I will help you with that. Chapter 4 starts on page 61. Again, this opens with some rumors about Gatsby and that he's a bootlegger. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I want you to maybe think about that. Hold on to that term, bootlegger. This beginning of this chapter is, I want you to understand, is all about the different big names of New York and of that era, like all the tycoons, the railroad tycoons, the bankers, and he gives us a little background about them. Like he name drops the Hornbeams, the Voltaires, the the Cheadles, the Schraders, and all of those are from East Egg. So what Nick is doing here is he's trying to show you again the difference in class and status between the East Eggers and the West Eggers. Okay, he starts to talk about who comes from the West Egg on page 62, which are, if you look here, people from the movies, from Hollywood, the singers, again, the new money who really don't, they weren't really bred to be classy. So again, equally wealthy, but just they have different value systems. So page 63, bottom there, we're in, it says one morning late in July. So we're in July now, and Gatsby invites Nick to go out on his boat and also to go into town to meet his friend Meyer Wolfsheim. And he says, "Good old morning, old sport," on page 64. That's his way to sound sophisticated. Old sport. When you're going to find out really where Gatsby comes from. So everything that Gatsby has, if you look on page 64 and 65, it's kind of gaudy. And this is typical of West Eggers. They wear like the brighter colors and are flashier, where the East Eggers you'll see are like in the tans and the navies and the whites and are very refined with their appearance. So Gatsby is curious about how Nick feels about him. He wants to leave a good impression because Nick is Daisy's cousin. So that obviously he wants to set a good tone. Now, on page 65, I want you really to look over this again and highlight all of this. This is where Gatsby tells us he's from, and things don't just add up. Okay, he says he's from the Midwest, but he talks about it being, he says, I'm the son of some wealthy people in the Middle West. I went to Oxford University in England where I was educated. And then he says, Nick says, well, where in the Midwest? And Gatsby says, San Francisco, which is not the Midwest. That is the West Coast. Okay, so things are not adding up because Nick's from the Midwest. He would know, right? He talks about on page 66 going into the war and being a part of that. What else here? Gatsby's like a try-hard here. He's really on page 67 trying to show and impress Nick. Here's what I did in Oxford. Here's what I did in the war. Here's my medal. And I just think it's funny that he's trying to win over Nick so much here. So then Nick says on 67, well, then this is all true about Gatsby. And we can assume for now, but you might find out some things later. So they're headed to lunch, and let's see here. They drive through the Valley of Ashes, and they see Myrtle. Remember Myrtle Wilson, Tom's mistress, the saucy redhead in the pictures I've showed you? They show her standing out. So again, very symbolic that Gatsby and Nick are driving through the Valley of Ashes, which represents sin and death and destruction. As they go into town, Gatsby's pulled over on page 68. I wanted you to pay attention to this. He's pulled over by a police officer, and he just flashes a little card, and then the police officer says, okay, bye, you're okay. And I think this is funny because Gatsby's so well known and he's like in the know that he can even get out of a speeding ticket. He just shows an officer a little card, like a get out of free jail card. Not following the law very well, but Gatsby has friends in high places, right? Something that Fitzgerald tells us through Nick's voice here on page 69, just to create this illusion or this theme that things are kind of topsy-turvy right now, is they talk about a limousine driving by with a white driver and African American passengers. And back then in the 20s, that did not happen. Like, barely any African American people were wealthy. And so what Fitzgerald's trying to tell you here is, like, what do we believe? Like, I'm watching a black chauffeur drive, or a white chauffeur drive black people around. And again, totally common today, but you got to think about the 20s. Fitzgerald on page 69 is trying to set you up for this idea that things are not all what they seem right now. And then we meet Meyer Wolfsheim, who's a small, flat-nosed Jewish man. There's a picture of him there on the screen now. And they have lunch together. We find out that he has human molars for cufflinks. Cufflinks are the buttons that hold your shirt together. So pretty intimidating. So a question you should be asking yourself is, why is our friend Gatsby, who we love, I love Gatsby right now, why is he hanging out with this guy that has human molars? Is he a mobster, a gangster? You need to be thinking about that, okay? So they're making small talk. Nick, I wonder if I have another picture here. Yeah. Nick and Meyer Wolfsheim and Gatsby as they're out to lunch. And then Gatsby tells Nick on page 73 that Meyer Wolfsheim's a gambler and he's the man who fixed the World Series back in 1919. So Wolfsheim he's pretty up there in a negative way, in a corrupt way, but you should start putting two and two together. How is Gatsby getting his money? How is he extremely wealthy? Sounds like he's not doing it in a good way. Okay. I want to keep going. I don't want to take too much of your time here. Oh, okay. So in 74, if you were confused a little bit, this is a flashback, and this is where we learn all about Daisy's past. It goes back to her being 18. So this is like almost 12 years ago, because they're all close to their 30s right now. So it talks about how Daisy met Jay Gatsby, because Gatsby was this young, handsome soldier right out of the war, or going into the war, I should say. And they met at her house where she had all these gentlemen callers come over. And it started to be a fling. And then if you look at page 75, Gatsby went off to war and Daisy wasn't about to wait around. Like, young women, especially wealthy women, they got married young and were, made that connection so that they could be secure, financially secure the rest of their life. And after Gatsby left, about a year later, she was engaged to Tom Buchanan and they got married. And it talks about that on page 75. And this is Jordan. It flips to Jordan's voice too here on page 76, when she tells Nick about how she was Daisy's best friend when they were younger, a bridesmaid in her wedding. And so Daisy gets this letter from Gatsby saying, I'm coming home. I hope you waited for me. I can't wait to see you. And then this is on her wedding night, on Daisy's wedding night. She gets this, and she gets rip roaring drunk, and she rips all her pearls off, and she says, I'm not gonna tell him Daisy changed her mind. I'm not gonna get married. But her mom and Jordan, they got her back together, and they're like, you need to marry this dude because he's filthy rich and you're gonna be set for life. That's all I have to say about that. And she does. And this is what is sickening on page 77. On their honeymoon, I think it was on their honeymoon. Yeah. Tom cheats on her with the chambermaid. Okay. So he, once a cheat, always a cheat. And then from the beginning of their marriage, he has affairs. So we see that. And I'm on page 78 here if you want to go through. But Jordan tells us on page 78 that Gatsby bought that house so that Daisy would be just across the bay. And then Nick goes, oh my gosh, okay, all this is coming together. No wonder Gatsby was reaching his hand out towards the green light. No wonder he's obsessed with me because I'm connected to Daisy, and no wonder he's talking to Jordan all the time, and no wonder he did whatever he had to do, which we'll talk about more later, to have this colossal mansion. He's trying to win back Daisy, and he has to compete with someone who's equally as wealthy as him, which is Tom Buchanan. I love the quote on the top of page 79. He wants her to see his house, and your house is right next door. Oh, how convenient. Let's just kind of stumble together and, oh, we're all going to meet. And then he says, I think he half expected Daisy to wander into one of his parties some night, went on Jordan. She tells us that. So there's some things I want you to think about. What does it tell you about a man who is unwilling to let the love of his life go, and he waits and he waits and he waits for like at least 5 years, and he builds himself up and he makes all this money in hopes of just running in and seeing his true love again? You're either on one or two trains of camp here. You're either thinking, oh my gosh, this is so romantic, or what a creeper, right? So at the end of chapter 4 here, Nick says, we passed a barrier of dark trees. Unlike Gatsby and Tom Buchanan, I had no girl whose disembodied face floated along the dark cornices and blinding signs, and so I drew up the girl beside me, tightening my arms. Her wan, scornful mouth smiled, and so I drew her up again closer, this time to my face. So I'm guessing he's like just cuddling with her. And it's Jordan Baker who he's talking about. They're like sitting there kind of embracing, just decompressing and wrapping their brains around what Jordan just told Nick. So the last couple pages in chapter 4, if you were confused, we're flashing back to Daisy and Gatsby's youth and Jordan's youth as well. The whole story leading up to where we are now, and it's told through Jordan's perspective. So she's basically filling in Nick about who this Gatsby is, his plan to reconnect with Daisy, and he needs Jordan and Nick's help. And isn't it convenient that Nick lives right next to Gatsby and he's Daisy's cousin? Okay. So I don't even know how much I talked. I hope it's not that long. So I'm going to stop my video. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you love the story. It's one of my favorites. Again, email me if you need help or have questions. And till next time, cool cats, check back in for chapters 5 and 6 chat with Mrs. Dunlap. See you soon.